Do you want to hire a midwife, but you don't know what to look for or what kind of questions to ask? In today's video, I am going to share 5 things for you to consider when looking for a midwife and how to know who the right midwife is for you. But before we get into it, if you enjoy content on birth the way God intended, go ahead and click that subscribe button. So first of all, if you are looking for a midwife, I think it's safe to assume that you probably want a more holistic, physiological, more natural way of giving birth. And so one of the first things to consider when interviewing midwives and looking for a midwife is how holistic versus medical minded are they? Because not all of them think the same way. And you also have to ask yourself, how much does that matter to you? Where are you on the spectrum? For example, how knowledgeable are they about something like nutrition? Do they really emphasize it? Do they really educate you on it and really watch to make sure that you are getting all the nutrients that you need? When I was pregnant with my youngest, my midwife, she had me log for an entire week everything I ate that week just to make sure that I was getting what I needed and there weren't any gaps that needed to be filled. Also, do they recommend and have resources for other holistic care, like maybe chiropractic care? Do they emphasize these kind of things? What is their bent in managing potential issues that might arise? For example, is their first go-to to try to manage an issue with something like nutrition? Or how quickly would they transfer care? Legally, they are not allowed to continue care if certain issues arise because it is considered too high risk. But even beyond that, there are different ways to approach issues, and some of them will have more of a medical bent and some will have more of a holistic bent. For example, I had 2 back-to-back births recently where both babies, they came out strong, they were crying, they pinked up, but they were both working a little harder than usual to really clear their lungs and work that fluid out of their lungs. But they were managed differently because these were 2 different midwives at 2 different births. So baby A, his was managed with some manual breaths, but also some craniosacral fascial therapy. And baby B, his was managed with suction, a tube down his esophagus, and also oxygen. And so both babies, they recovered well, and they both had resolved the issue in a little bit of time. But this is just a good example of how the same situation can be handled in 2 different ways. And some people would want the more medical route, and some people would want the other route that seems to be more gentle. And of course, this isn't like an apples to apples comparison. There's no way of saying for sure that what worked for baby A would also have worked for baby B. And I will also say that with baby A, they also had oxygen on hand and it was ready just in case they felt that it was needed. But it's just that difference of how some people are bent towards certain ways of managing and others will go a different route. Also, what about that postpartum belly rub? You know, some midwives will watch and see if it's needed, and they don't really believe that it's necessary or helpful unless they can see that you actually are bleeding too much and it is actually needed. While others will just do that belly rub for everyone just in case. And then you might have somebody in between who will check just to make sure that the uterus is firming up, but they won't actually vigorously rub your belly unless they need to. So these are just a couple examples of how things can be handled differently by different midwives. So you just need to really evaluate where you are at and find somebody who is in agreement with that, who will click with you most and meet you most where your level of expectation is on these kind of things. The second thing that you might want to find out about is some midwives work in midwife groups and they rotate being on call. And so therefore you never actually know exactly who is going to be at your birth. And they also often rotate your prenatal appointments. So you are seeing someone different, almost every time. And again, this doesn't bother some people and they're totally fine with it. And that's great. But for others, they really feel like they want to build more of a relationship with their midwife, and they want to know exactly who it is going to be at the birth itself. So that is definitely something to consider and ask when you're interviewing if they are going to be seeing you throughout the prenatals and be the one at the birth. Number 3, does their demeanor and presence mesh well with you? Does their presence feel gentle and peaceful, or does it feel kind of loud and intrusive? And something that goes right along with this is, how in tune are they with physiological birth? Are they aware of giving you the space and privacy you need if needed? Are they aware and vigilant to do things like keep the room quiet? Do they make sure not to ask unnecessary questions or make unnecessary comments or distractions? And you may think, well, if they're a midwife, surely they do these things almost automatically. And yes, most of them do well with it, but I have noticed that there are differences in these things, that some really pay attention to that kind of stuff more than others. And you may even wonder, well, how do I know what they're going to be like in the birth until we get there, right? But usually you can pick up on at least some of this stuff to a degree, even in prenatals or an interview, just what their demeanor is like and whether it feels like it clicks to you or not. Number 4, how much time do they spend with you? And this includes prenatally, during the birth, postpartum. Are they answering all your questions? Do you feel rushed? Do you feel like they're being thorough? Are they helping to educate you and prepare you? One thing I have found, that some are a little bit more last minute midwives, as I call it, and some will spend more time with you in labor as well. And it's understandable. I think the reason that most midwives don't want to come too early is because they want to reserve their strength and energy for when it's actually needed, which is really more toward the end. And so if you do want to have someone with you for a longer portion of the labor, that's when it's a good idea to hire a doula. And some midwives will actually require that you do hire a doula for that reason, largely. And then post-birth, I've also noticed that some will linger a little bit longer than others. For example, they will want to make sure that you have gone to the bathroom. They want to make sure you've had a good meal to eat, that baby has latched and fed well, and they do a very thorough baby examination. Now, all midwives are going to do a baby exam, but there are some that do take a little bit more time and even can help you recognize things like maybe a possible tongue tie or lip tie as part of their newborn exam. All that to say, there is a difference from one midwife to the other as to how much time they are spending with you. But if you're feeling rushed and you don't feel like you are being given enough time, then maybe that midwife is just not a good fit for you. Number 5, are they spiritually or philosophically on the same page as you are? And how much does that matter to you? And maybe there are certain areas that matters to you in and others not so much. But if they are not, maybe consider how that might affect your relationship with them and how open you are able to be with them about everything that you want for your birth and your vision. And if you're not able to be open with them, just ask yourself how that might affect your birth and your experience. Ultimately, I would recommend that you don't settle for someone that you don't feel like is a good fit. I just heard a story recently. A mom said that she had 8 interviews with midwives before she found the right one, and she was ready to give up on the 7th interview and just settle, even though she didn't feel like this was it. But then that 8th interview ended up being the one that she really clicked with. And I would just say that it is so worth it to find the right midwife who you can build a rich relationship with, and that will help you be able to trust her so much more when it comes to birth. If you want to hear more about what makes a good birth worker, watch this next video on the screen. And until next time, thanks for watching.